The Bills and Bengals on Sunday features a marquee quarterback matchup between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, but don't sleep on either team's running back. Locked on Bills starts now.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Well, folks, welcome in. This is the last conversation that we're going to have before the Bills host the Bengals in Week 14 and look to improve to 9-4 on the season. I'll give you my 5 predictions for Sunday. We're going to talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills about a bunch of injuries, but I want to start with a couple of things, including some analysis on the running backs on Sunday, but also some thoughts on this Darius Slay situation, which is where we're going to start. So the Bills claimed veteran cornerback Darius Slay off waivers. He was released by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And after the trade deadline, all players are subject to waivers. And so they claim Darius Slay. They released Jamarcus Ingram, who was claimed by the Texans and is now on their active roster. And then ultimately Darius Slay is not going to come to Buffalo. He doesn't want to come to Buffalo. And he's contemplating retirement. And so when this all went through on Thursday, I had a lot of questions. I'm sure you had a lot of questions. How does something like this happen? How do the Bills release a player to make room for a player that isn't going to show up? Should Brandon Beane have done more diligence, right, and contacted Slay or his agent about coming to Buffalo to make sure that would happen before releasing Jamarcus Ingram? And we got some great clarity on the procedures here that helps at least me land at the right perspective on this overall situation. And so Sal Capaccio on WGR did a great job of really detailing the variables in place that answered the questions that I had. And so Sal said, hey, look, when a player is waived, they are still the property of the team that waives them until they clear waivers. So Darius Slay, even though he was on waivers, was still the Steelers' property. And so therefore, Brandon Beane and no other general manager can speak to Slay or his agent, or that would constitute tampering. You can't do it. So any thought that Brandon Beane should have contacted Slay or the agent, he cannot do that. That's inappropriate to be mad at Brandon Beane for that. Then when a team claims a player, they immediately go on the 53-man roster. So when the Bills submitted their claim for Darius Slay and they were rewarded him off of waivers, the Bills had to create a roster spot, which they released Jamarcus Ingram to do that. And look, I like Jamarcus Ingram. He's been around for a while. It's a great developmental story. He went to University of Buffalo, provides depth in multiple spots in the secondary, can play some special teams. Ultimately, a guy that's been a healthy scratch the last 3 weeks. And so now we're waiting on some possible resolutions. What are those resolutions? Well, Darius Slay could show up and play. Don't think that's going to happen. The Bills could waive him. That would kind of be silly because now you're just giving Darius Slay what he wants, and you don't have Jamarcus Ingram. You don't have either player. And so I would certainly not give Darius Slay what he wants, which is to be available and go sign in Philadelphia. He can go on the retired list. He can go on the did not report list. And if he goes on the did not report or retired list, then he would not count against the 53-man roster. Right now he does. As of the recording of this podcast, he does. And so we'll see where this goes. But obviously this kind of blew up on the Bills, right? It blew up on the Bills. Now you don't have either player. You basically just lost 2 veteran cornerbacks for nothing. And it's not great. I do have some grace for Brandon Beane because how was he supposed to know that Darius Slay wouldn't come to Buffalo? Maybe there's a calculated risk. You could think, well, is this going to work out? I don't really know how you could put yourself in a headspace. Brandon Beane's just trying to improve his roster. He's trying to improve his cornerback depth. We've seen Christian Benford get injured the last several years late in the season. They don't have him in key moments in the playoffs. We've seen Dane Jackson have to start playoff games for this team. We've seen Rasul Douglas have to play through injury in the playoffs, and I don't really take exception with him wanting to improve the cornerback depth. It's a good stylistic fit. It's a nice addition for late in the season. Unfortunately, he's not going to come to Buffalo, and that complicates everything. Now, in listening to Sean McDermott during his press conference on Friday and him being asked about this situation, boy, you could tell he was perturbed. He came out and said, yeah, the plan was to get Jamarcus Ingram back on the practice squad, and said, I'm a Marcus Ingram fan, and I wish him well and all those types of things, but you could tell he was perturbed. I bet he didn't want him. I bet you he didn't want Darius Slay. I think he was probably satisfied just continuing with Jamarcus Ingram, and now he's a member of the Houston Texans. Now, maybe in a couple of weeks, Jamarcus Ingram will be released, and he'll be right back in Buffalo. But right now, this just didn't work out well for the Bills. To me, it signals something that I've kind of picked up on over the last year and a half, is that I think that there is some tension between Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. I don't necessarily believe that they are in complete lockstep. And I think that's to be expected. There should be competitive tension between these guys. They're building this thing for years and years and years. They're close to going all the way, and there's been issues. And I'm sure that Sean McDermott has some questions about the rosters that he's been dealt, and I'm sure that Brandon Beane feels like he's dealt a roster that can go do it, and coaching has been an issue. I think it's normal and even healthy to an extent for there to be some competitive tension. But after Brandon Beane went on this tour all off season long talking about the issues with the defense last year, well, Sean McDermott's a defensive-minded head coach. I just feel like there's tension there. And I hope that some good questions are asked. And I'm very curious to see what type of shakeout there is this offseason. Because these guys went from doing pressers together to never. And they're just the commentary from both of them is interesting. You hear about Sean McDermott. He was asked about the trade deadline this year, and he said, that's Brandon's arena. He's asked about Darius Slay. He said, I'm focused on coaching this team for Sunday. You just kind of pick these things up along the way. I just don't know what that relationship is like right now, and I'm a little concerned about it. Feels like there's disconnect. All right, my prevailing thought on this Bills-Bengals matchup, it's about the running backs. Now, I think both defenses have a ton to be concerned about, a ton. And, all the stories are going to be about Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. But I think these running backs are going to matter a ton on Sunday. Of course, James Cook, star running back, coming off of a huge game against Pittsburgh. He's having a huge year, obviously. And the Bengals' run defense is not strong. Neither is the Bills, right? But I think James Cook's going to have a big game. But don't sleep on the Bengals running back, Chase Brown. This is a good young player. He's in his third year out of Illinois. Was a 2023 fifth-round pick. I think he had a case to be the Heisman Trophy winner his final season at Illinois. He's got good size and athleticism, 5'10", 210. He's an elite athlete, runs in the low 4.4s. I think his relative athleticism score is like a 9.81 out of 10. 40-inch vertical. He's a really dynamic athlete with good size, and he's really coming on. And he became their kind of lead guy last year, and this year he's really putting it all together. Of course, he's on a streak right now of 6 consecutive games with at least 100 yards from scrimmage. That's a Bengals franchise record. But since week 7, he has really, really turned it on. Let me give you some metrics on Chase Brown since week 7. So among the 50 NFL running backs with at least 32 carries since week 7. Chase Brown ranks 5th in yards per game at 84. He ranks number 4 in yards per carry at 5.84. He's number 4 in explosive run rate. That's 8.1% of his runs go for 15 yards or more. He's 4th in success rate at 59%. He has the 3rd lowest stuff rate at 32.6%. He's 3rd in missed tackles forced per attempt at 0.22. And he's in the top 3 as well in yards after contact per rush at 2.87. He's a good young running back that, for as much as we want to talk about Burrow against the Bills defense and, the challenges of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and those are significant challenges. Don't overlook Chase Brown and his potential for being highly productive on Sunday. And so I think both offenses have a really good shot to move the ball and score a lot of points. Which defense can get the big stop? Which defense can get a big takeaway? That's what's going to, I think, decide this game on Sunday afternoon. All right, we got a ton of injury stuff to get into with Dr. Kyle Trimble, which we're going to do here on the other side of it. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. They have live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props, they update as guys heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown score, drive result, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. I'm joined now by Kyle Trimble. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He runs bangedupbills.com. You can follow him on social media at bangedupbills. He joins us each week to get ready for the upcoming Bills game from an injury perspective. And Dr. Kyle, we have some things to get into. There are some players ruled out, some big names that are questionable, but we should start with one player that's on the roster that won't play on Sunday, and that's Darius Slay. He's going to miss this game because he's salty, Dr. Kyle Trimble. He doesn't want to come to Buffalo. He wanted to get to the Eagles, and so the Bills will be without him, but obviously that's me making a corny attempt at a joke. Let's actually start with tight end Dalton Kincaid, who has been limited in practice all week. We know he has the hamstring, but the knee flared up this week and has complicated some things. And Sean McDermott tried to talk through it and was mentioning that it's something from back during the summer and perhaps something about the rehab from the hamstring has exposed something with a knee. Anyways, he's been limited all week. He's questionable for Sunday. I'd certainly like to get this tight end back because the Bengals have given up 256 more yards to tight ends and 5 more touchdowns to tight ends than any other team. Are we getting the tight end back this week?
If it was just a hamstring, yes. But with this knee, it certainly complicates things. So I know that before we came on, we had you were talking about Jerry Ostrowski on Bill's Squad had noted the type of brace he was wearing, and he was seen at Thursday practice in video and in photographs that he had the hinged knee brace on that he wore all last year as he's come back from the PCL sprain. And this is the same side he had suffered the PCL sprain on last year. So I know that a lot of people were complaining and concerned that he suffered an injury while he's rehabbing from his hamstring. He hasn't played since week 10 against Miami. Things happen. I don't know what caused this knee to get angry and swell back up. I don't know if he somehow aggravated it. He could have somehow tried jumping and hyperextended the knee, or he could have landed on it and irritated things. The fact that he's wearing the brace says there's some type of not necessarily instability, but they want to protect the area. And that brace locks out so the knee doesn't hyperextend, or it does prevent some rotation so he doesn't stress the MCL or even the ACL to a lesser extent. So this is a common brace we do see. I'm not all that concerned that the type of brace it is, but the fact that it's this PCL sprain again. Most often PCL sprains do not require surgery. I know there are some exceptions. We saw Gabe Davis have to get his repaired last year, but he fully tore his last year. And then we saw him come back and he's been playing well. So as for Kincaid, the knee really complicates things. The common sense thing says, hey, this knee's angry. Let's have you sit out another week and get this thing right. Your hamstring could benefit from another week. I'm less confident about him playing than other guys we're going to talk about, but I also see the benefit of even getting him out there, maybe getting him in red zone, knowing what tight ends do against the Bengals. I know a lot of people aren't happy with Kincaid, but it's like sometimes you can only control what you can control, and they're rehabbing from the hamstring, and then this knee pops up. So I'd love to know what happened with the knee. I know you mentioned some stuff at the top with McDermott highlighting what happened during preseason training camp. He did land on the knee. I can't remember which knee it was. Something makes me think it was the right knee, but still, it's unfortunate. And I'm curious to go back and see what McDermott said during his press conference to see if I can glean anything else. I might put in my article later.
Yeah, he's a really talented football player, but the injuries just feel like they are going to be part of the deal there, and that's the case for a lot of tight ends. But it felt like this guy was really breaking out this year, and it's shaky whether or not he's going to be even available. So the other player here of there's many players of concern. Let's get to the next player of concern, which is Joey Bosa. He's ruled out. He's not going to play on Sunday against Cincinnati. And I think everyone's heard my concerns about the pass rush. And obviously this is the Bills' best pass rusher. And he's going to miss with a hamstring injury that popped up against Pittsburgh. Of course, we know he's still working through the wrist. What are you seeing here, and what kind of timetable might we be looking at?
So Bosa injured his left hamstring. We know that because he grabbed at it, and they mic'd up the video that they put out every week. It's at 5:25 if you want to go look for yourself there. But on the video, it's better view with a replay and more end zone Madden view. He tries bending the edge. The right tackle kind of gets over top of him, pushes him down. His left foot gets kind of caught in the ground. His trunk gets bent forward, and that's what tweaks the hamstring. I want to keep in mind and let everybody know that this would have happened to anybody that was in his position. So I know he's had a ton of injury history. We've talked about that. I had my concerns when he signed, but the mechanism of injury was there, and there was nothing that any training staff could have prevented, anything that Bosa could have done differently, unless he, I don't know, doesn't step in that way there. But it's just one of those things that just, it happens. So I know that for timeline, Sean McDermott was hoping 1 to 2 weeks versus 4 or 5. I've seen things all across the board where he could be out for a while. I knew that with the hamstring, and given how they handle a hamstring, especially with Bosa, that they were going to keep him out at least a week. I can see him being out next week, which would be really unfortunate against the Patriots, but knowing what he represents, what he can do, you want to get him healthy for the playoffs there. So I'd be willing to bet that he's going to stay out for at least 2 weeks there, but we could see this linger a little bit more. But I'd be really, really surprised if they put him on injury reserve, because we saw the same process go out with Kincaid, Oliver, other guys, where if they think they could beat the timeline, they won't put them on injury reserve. So probably at least 2 games, but they want to make sure that things ready to go when he can go and bend the edge in the playoffs. And on top of the 2, his wrist will only benefit from having the time off, not getting beat up every week. And then we might see him come back with less tape and bracing on that area. So it's unfortunate, but it's just, that's how it happens. And there wasn't anything to do to prevent this.
Spencer Brown, Bills offensive tackle, limited all week with a shoulder. Of course, he missed last week against the Steelers. He's questionable for Sunday. The good news as it relates to the Bills offensive tackles is that Deion Dawkins cleared concussion protocol. He practiced in full on Friday and is expected to be fine for Sunday. But the right tackle is the question mark here. What do you have for us on Spencer Brown?
I'm more optimistic about Brown. Based off of what we saw in video, it looked like he'd torn his right labrum in his shoulder. Just the way the arm was dangling and what he was trying to do during the Houston Texans game, and then the way they wrapped it up. And then we saw in practice this week, he had the shoulder harness, like we see with Milano and Bernard and everybody else has had the different shoulder injuries throughout the years there. So he had that taped up and he was moving around well. And I know that Sean McDermott said on Friday that it was more about function. I think it's going to come down to how well can you block with that shoulder, how much pain you're going to have, any weakness, anything you can and can't do. If he were to sit out this week, anybody has had this injury, I've had this, it takes a little bit longer than 2 weeks to get back up to speed from your strength, building that stability and have the confidence to do what you have to do with the shoulder. But knowing an NFL player, he's got to have some more resources available to him. And then he's, tough as a $2 steak, as they've said. I expect him to try playing. It just, sometimes you have to protect yourself from yourself in terms of the player. So could he have played last week? Sure, but it would have looked like Houston Texans game. So I think this week, if he does play, he'll be looking pretty good. There might be some times where he's grabbing the shoulder, but I'm more optimistic about him playing than Kincaid at this point.
Can it get worse? Can playing make this worse?
Absolutely it can. We saw it with Jordan Phillips a few years ago. If you recall, he was trying to chase down, I think it was Mac Jones in the backfield back in 2023, and he had fell and just wrecked his shoulder, and he had tearing his rotator cuff, his labrum. I mean, it was a pretty lengthy surgery. And he kept on trying to play through that, and arm was just getting worse and worse. So it can be getting worse, and I think that's where it comes down to how is he doing practice on Friday, and that'll determine whether he goes and plays on Sunday.
Let's get to Josh Palmer here, Bills wide receiver. Hasn't practiced all week with the knee ankle deal that he's been battling since the Falcons game. Interestingly enough, he's listed as doubtful and not ruled out. I don't think he's going to play, but I mean, no practices all week and a doubtful designation is at least interesting.
It is. They don't like using the doubtful designation. They've only used that thing 10 times in the 8 years I've done this. Like, they don't like using that. It's either questionable or you play. So no one of the research I've done, less than 2% of players league-wide play since 2017 when I've looked at this stuff. There's no chance he plays for the Bills because they've never had doubtful player play under Sean McDermott, especially if they didn't practice all week. I think the last time you have to go back to a doubtful player that was a Bills player play, and it goes back to like 2015, I found, and I can't remember who that was. So he's not going to play, and if he does, he's not going to be very effective at all. Going back to the specific injury, he had a high ankle sprain. It looked like an MCL sprain. The ankle popped back up first. They say aggravated it last week, and then he's back on with the knee. I don't know what's going on that he's aggravating it. This doesn't reset the timeline by any means for his return, but it's really unfortunate because we saw how that tracked with his time in Los Angeles with the Chargers, how he'd be going on a run and then get some type of injury and then slow his run down and he'd get going again and something else. So he is not a Curtis Samuel type receiver where there's too many injuries, but it would just seem like it was just ill-timed injuries that really prevented his true potential being reached.
Terrell Bernard ruled out once again with an elbow injury. He has not practiced all week. I guess the good news is he hasn't been placed on injured reserve yet. What do you have for us on TB?
If you recall, he had the friendly fire from, unfortunately, Matt Milano when he was trying to wrap up, I think it was Woody Marks in the Houston Texans game. So, these things happen. Milano was trying to go in and make a play, and his helmet just happened to hit the forearm and hyperextended Bernard's right elbow. So, looking at that, most times elbows take a week or two to come back. The literature supports that, and how the Bills have managed those elbow injuries in the past, even dislocations, they don't miss a ton of time. But knowing that if Bernard was going to try to play through this, he would have a heck of a time wrapping up tackles. He would really have a tough time engaging blocks on the right side and having the stability available to keep the arm out straight and then shed blocks. And he could play, but he wouldn't look too effective. He'd be kind of looking like the linebacker version of Spencer Brown, if you will. So if this was playoffs, I suspect that he would be trying to play, but he'd be wearing the elbow brace that we see too many guys on the team already playing with this year. At this point, too, I also think they're hiding behind the elbow injury for Bernard and letting him try to get his body right, because we saw after the Week 6 Falcons game, he did suit up for the Panthers game in Week 8, but he did not play, and he's been battling something all year. We know it's an ankle injury in Week 6, but this has been going back to Week 1. I've talked about this with Eric Turner over at Cover One. I mean, he just lacks a lot of explosion off the right side, and that might go back to a hamstring injury back in the preseason. So I won't be surprised if we hear about stuff later on. He's a captain. He's going to play through wherever he can, but if they can keep him on the shelf and let him get ready for the playoffs, by all means, sit him out as long as you can comfortably keep him out.
Well, and with the way Shaq Thompson is playing, it certainly doesn't create a whole lot of urgency to put Bernard back in there and have him play hurt. So you got to get this guy right. You have some guys on the injured reserve list that I know you want to talk about: Tyler Bass, Landon Jackson, among others. So what do you have for us on those players?
So we'll get the easy ones out of the way. So they announced that Landon Jackson today won't return. If you recall, he suffered a right MCL and PCL sprain against Miami in like the third play. Thankfully, it wasn't the ACL because he's had a history of that, but it's unfortunate. He's not going to come back and play the rest of the season, but get healthy, work in the off season, try to get back and hopefully have a bigger role in year 2 for him. As for Bass, they also announced that he underwent surgery last week for the hip, pelvis, groin issue that he was having all year. I had said before that I thought it was osteoitis pubis, which is inflammation of the pubis symphysis that connects the pubic bones together and in the front of the pelvis. And this started back in the beginning of training camp, and he just kind of battled through it, played in the Buccaneers preseason game, and then it just was never getting better. And I know a lot of people are complaining that why didn't they do surgery sooner? Why didn't they do this or that? Sometimes you have to go through a process of rest and rehab, and then maybe try other interventions like injections, or there's other things you want to try doing. Surgery isn't always the first option. I mean, unless it's like an ACL tear or something's unstable and you need to create stability in there. Sometimes surgery isn't always the first option. And then even with the osteoitis pubis, from what I was looking at the research, the surgery, they use the word controversial. I don't know if that's the right phrase with it, but they're not always saying this is what's going to fix it. They said that they had different procedures that they tried. People came back and returned well, and they were able to do what they need to do, especially in kicking athletes. But there's no consensus from what I was seeing that they said, we do the surgery, we fix the problem, boom, you're back to normal there. So I don't know what procedure he had done, but the idea is let's get him healthy, then hopefully back for 2026. And then finally, Ed Oliver, we see him walk around the facility without the brace on the left elbow. We've seen him on TikTok. We've seen him do different stuff with the elbow. He's moving along great. And then Sean McDermott even said that he's not going to come back for the regular season, but there's a good chance for the playoffs, or paraphrasing that. But I thought all along he could return for the playoffs. To be a tight window for that, but it's not impossible given what they did with Matt Milano last year. But he's putting the work in, and give Joe Mika, the physical therapist, credit for getting him up to this point to have a chance to play for the playoffs, because we're going to need him when we get to the playoffs, once we qualify.
Tell you what, this 2025 draft class has just been banged up. Maxwell Harrison obviously missed all the time at the beginning with the knee. TJ Sanders has been on injured reserve with a knee. Landon Jackson is out for the rest of the year with a knee injury. That's your top 3 picks. Fortunately, Deion Walker's been healthy to this point. Same with Jordan Hancock and Jackson Halls, although Jackson Halls on the injury report with a back. He didn't miss any practice time, and he's expected to be fine, but that's on there. And then you get to Dorian Strong, who's maybe out for his career with a neck injury. Chase Lunt really hasn't played, and then Caden Prather didn't make the team. And you're talking about half of your picks have been on injury reserve, and was that at least 2 of them with season-ending injuries. And so that's an unfortunate start for these guys' career, but I guess that's football, right? So
exactly. And the thing is, like, you could say, hey, don't pick the injured players. Well, Harrison didn't have anything coming out of college. He had a shoulder injury he had a shoulder infection because he had a bad shot from an AC joint sprain. Like, the injection it's caused infection. Sanders didn't have anything. He never had surgery before. Jackson, we knew that coming in, but they take a risk in the 3rd round. Strong didn't have any issues, coming out. I think I said it's broken wrist. It's like these things happen, but like, you can't predict the future. Otherwise, we'd pick the guys who never get hurt. We'd pick the Brett Favres and the Joe Thomas and, all the guys that stay in there no matter what the hell's going on.
It's 100% risk of injury, the game of football. It's big, strong, athletic, crazy dudes smashing into each other. They're going to get hurt. And unfortunately, It feels like the Bills have just had a lot of bad luck with that. All right, Dr. Kyle Trimble, we'll talk again next week. Thanks for coming on and sharing some of your expertise.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you, and go Bills.
All right, folks, it's prediction time here on the podcast. Before we get there, I'd love to extend an invitation to you to check out the Herd Mentality Substack. You can check that out. Go to thejoemarino.com. There's a link in today's show notes, or you just type in thejoemarino.com right into your browser, and you can get to the Herd Mentality Substack. It's where I provide additional written and film content. And so there's a lot of content that comes through every single week, but next week's a great week for the Herd Mentality Substack because it's the end of the 3rd quarter of the season. So I'm going to do player grade updates. I'm going to do my 3rd quarter report card for the Buffalo Bills, in addition to my regular weekly post, which is the all 22 film breakdown, which is a video file that you're going to get. You're also going to get Josh Allen Weekly, where I chart Josh Allen in like every category and talk about all the different ebbs and flows and context behind his performances. And then, of course, my scouting primer, where I provide a head-to-head matchup of all the players in the lineup. I tell you, what caliber of player I think they are. We get into the weeds on all the different scouting intricacies as well. And so it's a great week to check out the Herd Mentality Substack, which also gets you into the Discord channel, which has over 2,000 Bills fans in it. Just a big organized group chat talking Bills all week long. And we go live every Wednesday night. We go through film together. I take live questions. So don't miss out on all that's happening. Check it out over at thejoemarino.com, and specifically check out the Herd Mentality Substack, where you can get additional written and film content from me. All right, it's time for predictions. I've got 5 of them for you. Number 1, James Cook. If you go to FanDuel right now, they have the over-under for his yards from scrimmage at 116.5. Smash the over on this one. I like James Cook's opportunities in this game. I think highly of the Bills' chances to run the ball very, very well. This is a Bengals front that lacks starting caliber players. I think B.J. Hill and Joseph Asai are probably their only ideal starting level players. They don't have a ton of depth. They have 2 rookie linebackers that are struggling. I think James Cook's going to be really, really productive. And so I think Josh Allen will have his production as well. But this is a game where I think James Cook gets around 25 touches and has a ton of production, certainly more than 117 yards. So put me down for the over on that. Number 2, Chase Brown, the Bengals running back. The over-under for his scrimmage yards is set at 75.5. Well, he's had at least 100 for each of the last 6 games, and I think he'll have a great opportunity against Buffalo to get some yards. Obviously, the Bills' defensive tackle situation, really their defensive line in general, a lot of question marks there with different injuries. No Joey Bosa for this game. But obviously the Bills' run defense has struggled this year. It certainly played well against the Steelers and in the second half against Houston. But I think Chase Brown's a lot better of a running back than what either team presents. And I mean, there might be a case that this Bengals offensive line is becoming quite formidable. And I think they have a good young left guard, a good young right tackle, and veterans in the other spots at center, right guard, and left tackle. And so I think it's coming together for them. And I think Chase Brown, whether that's catching it or running it, he will be a factor on Sunday afternoon. Number 3, I am predicting that Joe Burrow throws an interception. He has not thrown an interception this year, and he's never thrown an interception against the Bills. And it's not that I feel like overly confident in the Bills' pass rush and like them being able to really lock down these receivers, but I think at some point there's like a law of averages where it's just going to have to happen. And Joe Burrow still kind of playing through the foot, right? He's got this toe injury and he's wearing a special shoe. His accuracy wasn't there last week. I think his off-target throw rate was like 24%, which is unprecedented for Joe Burrow. And that was actually the 3rd highest of any Week 13 starter. And so I think the Bills will get one. I'm not sure they're going to get a bunch, but I think they're going to get one. So put me down for Joe Burrow's first interception of the year and his first ever against the Bills. Number 4, the over-under on points for this game is at 53.5. I think that's too low. Now, it's the 2nd highest implied total of the week behind the Cowboys and Lions on Thursday night. That was at 54.5, and obviously they smashed the over there. I think the over hits on this one as well. I think both teams flirt with or top 30 points. This feels like a 33-27 game, 30, maybe even more, but something like that. I think we get well over 53.5 points in this football game. And then, of course, do the Bills win or do the Bengals win? I think the Bills do win this game. I'm concerned a lot about Joe Burrow and him throwing the football against the Bills, but the Bills are a different team at home. They're a different team at home. And this Bengals defense is really struggling. I mean, whatever metric you want to point to, they're last in scoring. They're last in terms of giving up the most yards, EPA, third downs. They just have struggled. They've been tinkering with some lineup changes, with at corner in the slot. And I think they're looking for answers. Their defense has looked a little bit better, but they've also played some lesser teams. I think the Bills at home will put enough pressure on the Bengals to score with them, and I think the Bills will come away with some big play defensively to get it done, because that's kind of what they've been able to do here of late. So put me down for a Bills win on Sunday. So real quick to recap, James Cook over 116.5 scrimmage yards. Chase Brown over 75.5 scrimmage yards. Joe Burrow throws an interception. The over on 53.5 combined points hits, and the Bills win. And with that, the hay is in the barn. We've done all weekend, folks, to get ready for this game. The only thing that's left to do is for the Bills to go out there and win it, and then we can get ready for this date with the New England Patriots in Foxborough, where if they win, if the Patriots win next week, regardless of what happens between the Bills and Bengals, if the Patriots win, they win the AFC East. And folks, maybe that's going to happen. Maybe the Patriots are going to win the division this year. It's certainly in their favor, right? The odds are very, very high that they're going to do it, but not next week, right? Not against the Bills in Foxborough in front of their fans. But that's next week's problem. This week's problem is plenty big to focus on, and I'm excited to see this game. All right, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Thanks for being here, folks. Looking forward to Bill Squad Live right after the conclusion of Bills and Bengals, and then, of course, all the post-game content that you typically enjoy from me on Locked On Bills. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.